Good afternoon, Joe.
Hi Martin, how are you doing?
I am so good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, good actually. Having survived the pandemic here, although it's not over yet, we're kind of getting through it, so it's great.
You're kind of getting through it. I can't
Yeah,
thank you enough for agreeing to do this.
yeah,
The thing is, we've been talking for 5 minutes already, and you've just proved everything I know about you. I was just telling you how I was always impressed by your pragmatism when it comes to marketing and how. Yes, so I don't want to get into that, but thank you, thank you, thank you for agreeing to have this conversation with me, because I think this is about the most interesting people I've met in marketing. And I almost think of the people that I've met that have influenced me the most in marketing, you're certainly there or thereabouts.
that's very kind. Thank you.
It's true. It's
Nice.
absolutely true. So hopefully in the next hour, we're going to get some of this out of you, and
Okay.
it is going to go some way to influence other people to be more successful. So
Okay.
shall we give some people the context? Because this is the conversation we're just having. I
Yeah.
reached out to you. I'm like, will you do this thing for me? And you were
Yeah.
like, your first response, so this is a great example of your pragmatism, was, what's the point? Why are you doing this?
Well,
And
it
in the
wasn't
way
what's
that,
the point. It was what's your point, not what is the point. Yeah, big way. It's more like what's the point of you doing? What are you trying to get from it? That was my thinking, not what's the point.
yes,
Yeah.
but that is a perfect example of your pragmatism, because everyone else has been, yeah, sure, let's talk about marketing for an hour.
Yeah.
Not Joe Weatherall. Joe Weatherall is, there has to be a point of this. And if I
Yeah.
think about it with my marketing hat on, and then you should be thinking about it in this way and that way and the other way. And you've challenged me again in a way that nobody else has ever challenged me in terms of my marketing and what I do.
Yeah.
Um, and I want to talk about this because it feels like anyone can do this, and anyone is interested and qualified to do this now. But this is the way I understand you. This is the way I get you, is that it's always pragmatic. There always has to be a point. There always has to be some value. And so that's what I'm interested in. So the first question I ask
Yes.
everyone is, how are you qualified to talk to us about marketing? And I know that you are enormously qualified to talk to us about
Yeah,
marketing.
that's a kind of interesting question because I have absolutely no qualifications in the traditional sense for marketing. I came from, just an ordinary background, but I think what really gives us some credibility is the fact that I have been doing this for 35 years and we're still going. We still have a business. We're still talking to clients. We've had a number of our clients for, in this business for about 12 to 14 years. Some come and go, and that's absolutely fine. But we also have some that have been a long time. And I would say their businesses are better because of the contribution we've made. I'm not saying we are the sole reason they're better, but we are certainly part of the team that creates better businesses. So I think it's mainly about experience. It's also about, I absolutely love communication and the nuance of communication. I love the fact that it's a bit, the thing that fascinates me the most, for example, is translation. And when you translate something, if you just translate the words, that doesn't actually mean anything. But if you translate the meaning and the nuance, it starts becoming something quite beautiful. And if you take something like translating poetry, that'd be a good example of what I mean by that. So I was lucky enough to find a job. My first job was someone needed some help picking up some phones in a publishing company in central London. And I went along for 2 weeks, and because I just finished my A-levels, and I was kind of like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do. I didn't want to go to university, but I didn't know what to do. So I literally sat in this office, and I just fell in love with the whole media thing. And that sounds kind of ridiculous, but I was literally that kid who went, this is where I want to be. I love the whole thing of putting stuff together that communicated with people. And so my marketing comes not from the desire to flog people something or sell people something they don't want, but actually about building communications between people. So talking to your audiences, talking to your employees, talking to your staff, your members, whoever it is. I just love the way that communication works. And that's what I find really fascinating about it. And that's what I think I bring to all of my clients. I don't necessarily go in and say, okay, we need to sell this, this, and this. What I look at and say, talk to me about your business, about what you're trying to achieve, why it matters. And that results in a very sort of open and honest relationship, because I make them be quite honest with me about what they're good at. And I sort of say to them, look, a lot of people say they do what you do, but actually you're the only person who can do it the way you do it. So what I'm really interested in is how we tell people about that bit, because a million people produce glasses or produce mugs or whatever, but what's special about your mugs. And I loathe terms like USP, because I think they sort of suggest there's some magic formula. You have our USP is X, and actually the magic formula is bigger than just a sentence. It's the whole approach to your business that makes your business attractive and engaging with other people, in my view.
Wow.
Does that sort of explain it? Sorry.
It sort of explains it. It absolutely does. And okay. What's interesting is you were telling me how nervous you were feeling about this, and then we start talking and you're just off communicating. It's beautiful. Yeah. So what people need to understand then is when you talk about we, who is the we?
So we've always been quite a small company, small amount of employees. At the moment, there's 2 of us that are permanent, but we work with about 5 or 6 designers, 4 or 5 content, so writers, copywriters. We work with people who do our social media if we put it out. So effectively, we're a very small team, and we always have been. When we originally set up the company, which is the company Frank, which is the kind of sister company, there were 3 of us. I brought the other 2 out, or rather, they gave up working with me. Like I'm difficult. So. And anyway, and so what we wanted to do was at that time act more like a virtual company and a remote company, but that was very, very early. I mean, we're talking about dial-up modems and PDFs taking half an hour to come through. So it's a little bit too early to actually do what we wanted to do, because we didn't want a big office. We didn't want the kind of trimmings of all other marketing agencies, partly because we'd spent time in bigger agencies as the sort of crack new business team. And what we felt was that we weren't really then we then didn't deliver to our clients the promises we'd made to them. And that just didn't feel right, which is part of the reason why we called ourselves Frank, because what we tried to be was honest and sort of transparent from the very beginning. So the we now is myself and my colleague Ben, who's absolutely a little hero. He's fantastic. He's not little, actually, he's over 6 foot, but he's a really great guy, and we work really, really well together. We've got the sort of skills that work very well, whereas I'm noisy, he tends to be quiet. He's a real sort of thinker. I tend to be more kind of creative, going, woo, let's do this. I move towards the shiny things, and he pulls me back and says, okay, this is what we can actually do. So he's a real detail man. I mean, he does a lot of our SEO for our clients, and he will just go through a website with a tooth comb and just make sure that every single page is optimized, all the way through. So yeah, so it's just basically Ben and myself. Sorry, my phone's going mad. There you go. So yeah, okay. And that's it. So the we is a bunch of really, really top end, in my view, designers, writers, just the people we need. We bring them in as and when we need them. So none of our clients are paying for those people all the time. But because we've got really good relationships with them, I look after our suppliers. They send me an invoice, I pay it.
Yes.
There's never, and I've done that all the way through when I can afford it. Obviously, if the business hasn't got the money in it, then I'll be upfront about that and say I'm waiting for something to come through. But I've tried to build up those very, very good relationships, and the feedback from that, or the way it rewards itself, is I've actually worked with people who are my suppliers. We've then started working on projects that they've brought to me together. So I know you're going to ask me about new business, and a lot of it is actually a sort of revolving door of I'll go to one of my suppliers and say, oh, can you work with us on the design for this? They'll come back and say, can you help us build the website? Can you help us with the branding, or whatever else it is? So that's been an amazing experience, and one I feel very lucky to have. But I think it's because we all treat each other with absolute kind of respect. We respect each other's skills.
Okay, and you've done this as long as I've known you. So I've known you, was it 2006, 2007? You brought me in, you brought Effective Marketing to work on the Fringe.
Yes, that's
the Fringe
right.
Guide. Thanks for that.
That was a long time ago, wasn't it?
It was actually quite a lot of fun, but it was also a lot of hard work. And
a lot of hard work.
Didn't make anybody rich.
Shortcuts. I mean, one of the things I would say is with most of my career, what I think is there are not many shortcuts. And I think that's one of the things that's actually stood me in good stead, because when I do find something that I can do a little bit quicker or better than other people, it's great. But I genuinely believe nothing replaces hard work, diligence, checking things out, making it right.
Yes. And this is what we have in common. So, we have a lot in common. So I don't know, is the business just called Frank now? So for people who don't know about you, Frank, you are based just outside of Brighton. You are SEO agency, marketing agency, PR. Is that still stuff that you do?
No, we've never really done PR, to be fair, because I think PR is a really, really top-end skill. I think a lot of people say they can do PR, but in my view, what they mean is they can get you a feature in a local paper, and I don't think that's PR. I think PR is something the skill set you need to do it well is really, really top end. So no, we have Frank, which is essentially, it's more our branding and marketing and strategy sort of side of the business. And then we have Build One For Me, which is more about building websites and SEO and digital marketing. So Build One For Me was set up really because we wanted to sort of, because people kept saying, oh, do you do websites? Can you build one for me? It was literally that basic. So we were like, yeah, no, we can do that. And then we realized that a lot of money is being spent constantly on digital in a way that perhaps isn't being spent on people's branding and things. People often come to us and they'll say, oh, we want a website. And when we start talking, what we find is, because our background's more marketing, we don't just create a website. We don't just go, here's your website, off you pop, see you later. We actually kind of give them a huge amount. You talked earlier about value, and I think one of the things we're really good at is giving absolute value to people who come and see us. And I will say to people, I don't think you need a new website. I think you need to re-energize yourself about your business, because that is so often, I cannot tell you how many people are sat in my office saying, I need a new website. And my first question is, in the words of, I think, Seth Godin, is start with why. So I ask why. And they say, oh, well, because this. What they want is they want to feel good about their business again. And sometimes that is all we do. Sometimes we have clients in, they may even come for a couple of meetings, 2-3 meetings, and actually at the end of it, we just go, no, now you're feeling better about your business. We can now start looking at making it work better, getting things working harder for you. And that's what we do.
Wow. And I absolutely think that's true. And I maybe not in that framing. I think in the other way. I think marketing is, I think marketing is necessary. Like, you don't have a successful business if you're not in the business of finding, winning, and keeping customers profitably.
Yeah, right.
But I think marketing is definitely the one thing that goes on in your business is that gives you the opportunity to feel better about yourself, because you've got some freedom in the way you present yourself. You've got some freedom in the products and services that you provide, even right in the very essence of it. There is some freedom, there is some choice. And the trouble for a lot of people, I think, is when a business is up and running, then it's a freight train and you are serving it rather than it serving you.
Yeah,
so
totally.
Absolutely 100% agree with that. And I don't doubt for a second that you tell them, no, you don't need a website. This is the pragmatism that I've always associated with you.
And also, I mean, if someone thinks that the answer to their question is a website, you've really got to ask what the question is, because there's so many, a lot of people, for example, we had a guy locally came in and he wanted a new website. He didn't really understand why. So he was saying, ring various companies up saying, I want a new website. And then he rang me and said, I don't understand, Joe, because I've had quotes between £10,000 and £1,000. Why am I getting that? I said, because you haven't given them a proper brief. I said, you haven't given us a proper brief. And I said, this is what, and that's one of the reasons why I haven't come back to you with our quote, because actually I don't know what you want and I don't understand your business enough. And you don't know what you want. You just want someone to say, hey, here's loads of pretty pictures. And we literally won't do that for people. And in the end, I think when you say that, you really shock people, because they can't quite believe they're offering you money. But I mean, what are they buying? It's just crazy. So I try to make sure people understand what they're buying from us before they spend the money with us.
Okay. And this is perfect, because this might be the way that you've actually influenced me the most. Because, like, at one point, I know your website is Frank on the Web, is it still?
Yeah, Frank on the Web, and buildoneforme.com as well.
And buildoneforme.com.
Yeah,
okay, so I'll make sure those are linked when I transcribe that. Okay. You could have actually placed that logo a little bit better, unless you're going for subtlety.
Subtlety's good.
So you were called Frank Communications.
Yes.
And you've always been very frank. This pragmatism that I'm talking about, because it seems to me that so much of marketing is just mired in bullshit, which is why I'm doing my What the Marketing Jargon Busting series.
Yeah.
I think if you can get through that with people, then you're empowering them essentially to be more successful. If they know, like so many people, when I deliver for the Digital Marketing Institute, so many people are on that 5-day course because they're like, our suppliers are talking junk to us. We have no idea what they're talking about. So if you can tell us what they're talking about, then that would be value enough, you know? So this, I think, is where you've influenced me the most, with this idea that actually there's too much BS in marketing. And if you can remove the BS, then you can be more successful.
Yeah, but I think it takes a certain sort of client to accept that. I know that I'm not being, you know, so we're not right for everybody. We have people who want us to, you know, they want us to find the bullshit. They want to kind of find a way. I want to compete with this company here. And you're going, well, how could you possibly? You don't do the same thing. You don't have the same attitude, all these kind of things. And what we try and do is we try and explain. So we do try and enable people and empower people. That can have, I mean, I know from my own experience that can end up not being great for us as a business, because you empower people and then they start believing the way you're empowering them. And it can mean they sort of then think, oh yes, I now know all the answers, and they want to go off and do it. And we've had that as well. But I'm kind of okay with that, because I think there's a sort of time and a place for working with companies like ours. And luckily, some people, or not luckily, but some of those people we've grown with and they've grown with us, and it's been a really, really good relationship. Some people, the passerbys and the passer-throughs, some of it is because they become so empowered and enabled that they just don't think they need us. And once that happens, it's very unlikely they'll come back. And we've learned that through experience, and I'm absolutely fine with it, because my view is I can take you to so far, but I cannot make you into a marketeer if it's not in your bones. And yes. I can't make your company into something it's not. All we can actually do is be, you know, what we used to say slightly arrogantly, or I don't know, slightly bit bullshitty, I suppose, but we say we only deal in truth. And actually, that is kind of true. It's like what we try and do is find out the truth about what you're doing and how you're doing it, and then let other people know about it, and let other people make informed decisions about whether they want to work with our clients and whether they want to buy from our clients.
Yes, good. I love this. This is like the last one of these I did with Nikolai. Is we were talking about the difference in the way you can present value now with digital marketing, because you have data, so you can do that. And the conversation I was delivering for the Digital Marketing Institute this week, and I was talking to them about the data and the reports that they should put together, and the fact that those should be numbers, because there's truth in numbers. Because the risk is, if you're not running your business objectively, the risk is always that your business gets run, your marketing gets run subjectively. So people take what I'm saying to you too far, which is, you know, marketing is the opportunity to have fun with your business. You get to make choices here. And they're like, well, I can have whatever I want. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas actually for me, it's always about meeting the needs of the market. That's how you get to be successful. That's really good marketing.
Yeah.
So the frustration for me was always, someone would see me speak, they'd invite me into their business.
Yeah.
Everyone would get stupidly excited. The first hour you spend with me is definitely the best hour you're ever going to spend with me in your life.
Totally agree.
Yeah, I should have charged £10,000 for that, and then not even left my telephone number, just gone.
Walked out.
So they'd be stupidly excited when I leave.
Yeah.
And then by the time I go back for a second meeting, they know it all. And they just want what they want again. That was always the frustration for me. And
yeah, I mean, interestingly, I get that, Martin. I think you and I have sat in a meeting with a potential client, and we've experienced that, haven't we, together? I remember it quite well. What we actually do now is we put together a sort of workshop thing, which we call the FIT workshop, and FIT is forming intelligent territory. And that's all about working with our client, with new potential clients, and they pay for the workshop. It's basically a half day to 3 or 4, it can be 6 hours, but normally it's about 3 or 4. And we want in that workshop kind of key people in the business. That doesn't mean all the bosses. It actually means we want, you know, the people from it can be the person who answers the telephone, it can be the person who packages your good, but we want a mix of people in the business, and we just talk about what the business is, what it's delivering, how it's delivering it, so that we only really answer 4 or 5 questions in that, but it's really insightful because we write down every single thing the business does. So a lot of businesses learn to say, I do this, right? Now the point is, millions of people do this, but what they don't necessarily do is all the thing behind that. So we, for example, one of our fit workshops, we found one of the companies, one of the reasons people really liked them was because they had a really efficient accounts department. Now that sounds ridiculous, but actually talking about the fact that we pay our bills on time, we do this, we do that, means that you become a company that people want to work with. And what we've always tried to do is run these workshops which get everybody on board. We then go back and deliver the outcomes of the workshop with, and we put together a sort of proposition code about the whole essence of your business, if you like. And that has really, really helped us. A, it enables us to get to know a lot about the business very quickly, and B, it gets us to kind of explain to the business themselves. They start looking and they're going, okay, this is what we're about. We think we're about that, and that's what we've been talking about, but actually we have all this stuff going on that makes us incredibly good at all of those things. And one of the questions that they answer is, what are you exceptionally good at? And nobody really asks companies what they're exceptionally good at. And by the time we ask that question, they've gone through absolutely everything they do, from to deliveries, whatever it is they do. And so they're used to talking in that way. And when you say, so what is the thing that you're really brilliant at? They identify 4 or 5 things that they do, and they know they do better than anyone else. And that's just a great place to start your marketing from, basically.
Well, 5 or 6 things is an amazing place. I mean,
incredible.
I spoke to, in another one of these, I spoke to, I can't even remember his name, but he was talking about like unique set. He was talking about developing unique selling points.
Yeah.
Like he was almost suggesting that you have to come up with unique selling points for these businesses.
Yeah.
And that for me is part of because I'm also fascinated by this levels of communication thing. Yeah. Because what happens in marketing is there's too much jargon. We're talking jargon, people don't want to buy from us. But it happens in every business, because clearly if you are inside the business producing something, you are going to develop a shortcut language for talking about that. But it's completely inappropriate always that you use that language when you talk to your customers. They don't like it. They specifically don't like it. That's why they need agency. That's why they can't do it themselves. That's why they need people like us to can tell them, like, from outside, this is the way it looks. Yeah. So 5 or 6 things is amazing.
But it may be, Martin, it may be something, as I said, like, we have a really good this. It may be something that you may not consider to be something worth marketing. It may not even be a saleable thing. But what it is it's an essence of their business that I find so fascinating.
Yes. And I think what it has to be is it has to be a truth. So don't bring in a marketer who's going to write bullshit taglines about, this swizzy thing, that swizzy thing. Yeah. Because the truth is so much more believable, and it's so much more durable because the truth carries on. The truth is,
absolutely.
Do you know what I mean? So it's not. So part of the issue, I think, with lots of businesses is that if they are marketing themselves falsely, when people become their customers and they see those discrepancies or they see those misalignments, that's where the trust goes. Do you know what I mean? It's like, well, we weren't expecting this.
No. And I think the other thing that we don't do now, which we did initially, but is that we don't spend months and months. Well, we don't spend huge amounts of time putting together very glossy presentations for new clients. What we do is we meet them, we talk to them, and if they want that glossy, I'm going to come in here, I'm going to impress the socks off you with this, this, and this. I'm not saying, by the way, that we don't do a nice presentation, because we do. But what I won't do is try and tell them all about me and why you should really use Frank, because it's not about us. And if they don't get that it's not about us and it's about them and their business, then they're just not right for us. I'm not being sort of, I'm just saying, we know, I spent 30 years understanding who we appeal to. I understand the type of age group we appeal to, because generally, if people want to work, they think digital and they think, oh, you've got to be really young. But the thing is, I can explain how digital works to people of my own age who are often managing directors, owner managers, whatever. And they can go, oh, I get it. I understand now, because exactly like you said, they've had 4 agencies going in. They're fantastic young people, but they just don't have the same set of language, and they haven't learned the language of these people. So it's about in my view, just finding appropriate business is what I think it's about for us anyway.
Yes. And it's genius what you're saying, because actually being in business or winning customers and keeping customers is never about you. It's always about the customer.
Absolutely.
And that is why exactly the inverse happens. Like, people are like, well, I'm spending the money, I should decide exactly what my marketing looks like. And it be driven by ego. And that is maybe why marketing fails, is because it can't be about you. It has to be about what the value that you deliver to your customers, and your customers needing that value and wanting that value.
Yeah,
Does
I
that
think,
make sense?
yeah, no, it does make sense. Well, you said something earlier. You were talking about numbers earlier. You were talking about data and about, because we
Yes.
do have access to unbelievable amounts of data now, and it's just amazing. I mean, and the crazy stuff is that an awful lot of it is free. I mean, Google Analytics, if used well, is just phenomenal resource.
Yes.
But the thing I think is interesting is it's not about that resource, it's about how you interpret what you learn from that. And that's the difference. So I would say we're able to interpret things in a way, because our background's the way it is and because it's based on experience, we can look and go, okay, we're seeing this. So what we're going to do is we're going to make this little change, and let's then look at the response to that. So we're not just going in saying, haha, we got 9 million people to your website. What we're going in is, we got 5, but you know what? They're all exactly the right people.
Yes.
And you know, so it's just good targeting, because I'm a believer in just because you can, you don't have to. So you can send out a mailing very cheaply to 200,000 people. It costs the same amount as sending out a mailing to 50,000 people, or you know, it's the same sort of price. But my view is just look after those people and talk properly to the ones who you know will want to work with you. And I've always had that attitude, which is so that we use the numbers to gain intelligence in order to talk to people better.
Yes.
Rather than just to say, hey, look at these numbers.
Yes. And I think that's ideal. The way I talk about it is like, what you really need for every marketing initiative is like a dashboard. So you need like your top 8 or 10 KPIs, and then you know everything is going in the right direction.
Yes, absolutely.
But the last numbers on the right hand column are going to be the numbers that really count: the number of inquiries, the number of sales, the value of those sales.
Yeah.
And that's what matters, rather than the front end, which is X number of thousand of people came to the website. Well, it doesn't matter if they come to the website. It's only costing you in bandwidth if they're not actually converting.
Yeah.
So, yes.
But I think also one of the things we try and look at is just making sure, you know, using the right technique is just making sure those people are coming and they get what they expect when they get to your site. So whether it's a product or whatever it is. So we're just constantly trying to make sure that our clients are offering value to their customer bases, and that will be all their audiences that are coming through. We want to make sure that, you know, if you're putting information about a product on there, you've got to relay that to the person who's buying that product. What do they need to know? You know, and sometimes, you know, you're, especially if you're using something like a sort of setup structure, you won't be telling them that the key thing they want to know, which may be not the obvious. But if you understand who your audience is, then you understand what those people need to know in order to make that purchasing decision. Because I still think people don't always buy the cheapest online. There is a view that they do, but I certainly know that I will look around for a company that tells me the things I need to know. And unless they're prohibitively more expensive, I will nearly always buy direct from them, because I think they have an invested interest in serving me, whereas I don't believe that a lot of these big online retailers have a vested interest. All they're trying to do is sell me something cheaply, and that's having an on effect on every single person.
Well, I think that's interesting, because the next WTF that I'm going to do is pricing, and I don't think people care about when they're buying. I don't think they care about price at all, not for a second. What they care about is value. Now, you might say to me, but the first question is always, how much does it cost? But the only reason they're asking that question for me is because they want to know if it's available to them. You know, is it something they can afford? Once they know that they can afford it, then it's literally about value. It's always about value. Or else we would all be driving Robin Reliance, wouldn't we? The Rolls Royces and Bentleys wouldn't exist, you know. So I think,
yes. I mean, that's another interesting thing actually, about occasionally we get asked to, you know, go for a project and they don't give you a budget. They say, oh, no, I'm not going to tell you a budget. And I sort of say, well, look, if you don't give us a budget, then I can't deliver the best value for the budget. I said, I can tell you what would be the ideal scenario. I said, but you're not giving us any parameters. If you tell me you've got £10,000, and I will tell you the best way that we think you can spend that £10,000. And we always try to have that on hand. What we don't try and do is go, oh, how much money can we make? And therefore, what do we think we can get out of them? What we try and look at is absolutely how we can deliver the best value. So if someone wants a website and they won't tell us how much money they've got, that's an impossible, you can't possibly give them the right solution, because you may be going, well, actually what you need is a Shopify site, this, that'll do the job you want, and all of a sudden you're into tens of thousands of pounds, and this client's got a £6,000 budget. So we always try and understand what the budget is, because generally we can deliver something within that budget, but we tell them what they can't, what they're not getting from it. We say, look, we could do it. This is the best way to spend your money, and longer term, look at this. And that helps us with our long-term relationships, because people, they learn to trust us. They learn that we're not just there to take things away, but it isn't natural for them, because they naturally don't want to tell me how much money they've got when they come into the shop.
Yes. Because they think you're just going to take all their money, because that's the way so many marketing agencies actually function. Yeah. And I think, what's the thing? I think if I'm right, like I tell people that sales and marketing is about finding, winning, keeping customers profitably. So the job of any sales or marketing agency is literally to deliver more cost-effective, higher value customers, to deliver more value. Which is the job of anyone who's selling anything, is to deliver value. Yeah. But the world is so far gone almost that that's forgotten.
Yeah, and I think people get very insecure. I think that's the thing, that people kind of think, well, if we reduce our price, someone will buy, but they won't buy at a higher price. And, there are innumerable things that prove the opposite. But actually, I think it's a fear. I think it's kind of like, what's your day rate? Or it's, how are you structuring those prices? And my sort of thing is, I will look at people's, I'll look at a business and I'll say, well, one of the quick questions I will have is, where do you make most of your money? Now, again, people have to trust me before they'll tell me that. But there's often a thing they do that makes them more money than other things they do. And then you know that from your own business, if you do X, Y, or Z, depends on how much money you can make. And so I ask the client that, and the client will, if I've built up that trust and I've got that relationship, they'll say, well, actually, this is where we make our money. So I go, okay, that's the thing we need to constantly be looking at and talking about and bringing to the fore, so that we make sure.
Marketing.
Well, marketing, absolutely, but also never forgetting that you can spend an awful lot of money trying to sell a very low cost, low margin product, for example.
Yes.
And that can be tough. I mean, it can be very tough when you're doing SEO. If you actually identify how much it costs to get a very low margin product top of search engines, it can be crazy. It doesn't make sense. And again, we try and look at that. We try and understand that and say, so in this instance, it's not about how many pens, we'll optimize, we'll do it right, but actually you really make your money here. So let's concentrate on that. And by doing your site completely brilliantly, it all comes up anyway. It all moves up the rankings because it's all performing as it should. So we get quite kind of, we're fine with that again. But you have to have, if you imagine, if you're a business, you have to have a lot of trust in your marketing company, really, to tell them that. And if you don't have that trust, the marketing company is sort of slightly scrubbing around in the mud, going, and so you have to have an honest and open relationship, and it has to be equally considered by both parties. I don't think a marketing company should be trying to hide things from the client, and I don't think the client should hide things from the company, because if you have that, that's difficult. That's a tough way to work.
Yes. So, and here's the thing then. So why are so many marketing agencies? Do you know that the average lifespan of a digital marketing customer in London is 3 months?
That's mad, isn't it? No, I didn't.
That is mad, because I mean, and so there's a few things in what you're saying. If you are looking to engage a marketing agency and you don't understand that the core function of that marketing agency is to affect the amount of money you make, and for them to be able to do that, they need to know how much money it is. Yeah. You need to think about why you're in business in the first place, you know? And so if you don't trust, but so there's two things that people invest in marketing, they don't know this is about how much money they're making. That's ridiculous, insane. And then the second thing is you have to have so much faith in your marketing agency, and marketing agencies are so untrustworthy, are so slippery. Like, I know you're doing really well in SEO for people.
Yeah.
And in the last conversation with Nikolai, we were talking about how that's the hardest thing to sell, because you have to wait a period of time to see the results. You have to keep the customer invested for that period of time.
Yeah.
And I know, because I know, I can look at a website, and the people I taught the course to this week know if they're looking at a website for 30 seconds, whether it's been optimized or not.
Yeah.
You know, it's as transparent as that. But literally, SEO agencies are taking people's money and not doing the work because they're telling them this is all just too dark and mysterious for you to even be able to understand, you know?
It's kind of interesting. So the way, again, the way we talk about SEO when we first start talking to people is saying, you know, we actually have a sort of infographic that talks about it, but we always say the first thing you've got to get right is your architecture. And there are things that we know with most sites we can do that are what we call quick fixes. And those are basically where you're just going through, you're doing the housekeeping and you're doing it really well and you're doing a deep clean. That will have a fairly instant effect on some elements of SEO. And again, what that becomes is our trust point. Because we say to people, these are quick fixes. Don't expect that every fix we do from then on will do what this will do for you. But what it will do is it will show you we know what we're talking about. And that, again, that's really been useful for us to understand how to tell people about what we're doing. One of my colleagues that I work with quite a lot, he has a view that basically SEO, if you're selling SEO, the easiest people to sell it to are people who've tried it and done it themselves unsuccessfully, because they understand how hard it is to do it right. And when you understand how hard it is to do it right, you understand it's a skill you have to pay for. We have actually, because we have quite a lot of small clients, because we're very locally based and locally and community focused and that sort of lovely stuff, we developed something called DIY SEO, which is basically means that a small client, a small guy, so it might be a one-man band, runs his own website, he can actually just tie up with us. We do a day, a month with him, that's all we do. But he'll come to us and go, right, or she'll, whoever, will come to us and go, and we'll say, okay, this month we're going to do this, or you're going to do this. And we tell them how to do it within their platforms, so within Squarespace, WordPress, Magento, Shortshot, or whatever it is. And then they go away and they do that. And we go, okay, and we look at the results and go, okay, so this month you need to go away and do this. And we've had incredible success with that. I mean, we've got a local PT that we've been working with, and that's what he does. But he spends the time on it. So basically we're giving the information and he's spending the time. But again, that takes a certain type of relationship for that to work really well, because if the guy doesn't do the work, if the owner of the site doesn't do the work, it isn't going to happen. But we pretty much, you can gauge that quite quickly, actually.
Yes.
You know, as to whether, you know, because you can literally see whether they've done it or not. But we have had real success in that. You know, we've kind of gone through and said, okay, this is your business. Let's think about the terms that you can potentially move up for and the ones you can't, because some terms are so competitive that we sort of say, let's actually look at that's why, again, understanding the whole of the business allows you to be a little bit cannier about the way you've done it. And, you know, certainly we've had clients that have been, you know, like they actually can't believe they're doing it, because they can literally see their own analytics going up and up and up and up. And that's they will get to a level where it won't continue to go up, because it will be the level at which they should be operating.
Yes. And I think that's right. I think that's perfect. I mean, you don't have to spend very long trying to build links to your website before you realize it's a much better idea to find someone who can do it for you.
Yeah, actually, we don't do much link building. That's probably the area that we're not so good on, because it's done so badly by so many people.
Yes.
And it has become something that Google has really, really knocked clients back on. So what we try and do instead is create situations where people want to link. So we create content that people will want to link to, rather than go, we're going to link build to 50, 60 people. It is really important, but it is also something that, again, you know, if done badly, will actually have such a negative effect on your site that you've really got to, you know,
absolutely. So the underlying theme here is kind of, if I'm right, is being selective about who your customers are. Because I never said no to anyone. And I
No.
took on everyone, and it was torture.
I would say that that is something we only really done the last couple of years, if I'm really honest. I think that, and that's partly one of the reasons why we're now two people full-time employed, was because when we grew and got bigger, we had to do that. We had to take on any bit of business that came our way, because you can't turn anything down because you need to pay the salaries and stuff. And that becomes a problem. I mean, it certainly became a problem for us, because what you do is you end up servicing clients that don't really want you, you know, they don't really want to be with you, you don't really want to be with them, and it is not a great place to be. So that learning has taken me a surprisingly and embarrassingly long time to come up with, but it's totally where we're at now. Yes.
Yes. And the embarrassing thing for me is I've always told people this, and then I didn't do it.
No, totally. But it's because, you know, we all get embroiled in, and also I think it's about understanding growth. It's understanding what your idea of growth is and what your idea of success is, you know, and all of those things that are tied up as much in your own business as they are in other people's. You know, sometimes I'll see people and they have a business that makes them enough money to do all the stuff they want to do. They have everything in place, and again, but they sort of feel they should be doing something different. And sometimes it's just about really looking at that business and seeing, you know, people say, what's your exit strategy? What's this? You know, and it is about understanding the business needs of the marketing, as well as, you know, long-term, short-term growth. What are you actually looking for? Do you want to be the biggest, whatever it is?
Yes. So this is something also that I'm interested in. Is it Greta Thunberg,
Yeah.
the environmental activist?
Yeah.
And what did she call it? This childish belief in something growth, perpetual growth.
Mm.
So I think that's interesting. Do you know Ed Carr?
Yes.
Yes, Ed was the first person I spoke to, and we've agreed we're going to have a conversation about the morality of marketing. And I think there's levels to morality in marketing, like especially when you get into SEO, like Google are laying down this morality. But one of the moralities is around consumption. Is at what point is it enough? Do you know what I mean? And businesses are kind of schooled to believe that if they are not continuously growing, then they're not being successful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's a kind of, I mean, I think the morality of marketing is very interesting, because I still get people who sort of say, oh, well, marketing, you're just selling people things they don't want. And I absolutely disagree with that. I say, no, what I'm doing is helping give you the information that allows you to make a decision that's right for you. And, you know, I mean, you know, that might again sound a bit sanctimonious, but that's how I see it. I don't feel like I'm selling a load of tosh to people who don't need it. I feel like I'm giving people the opportunity to make a better decision and a more informed decision.
Yes. Okay, so that's interesting, because my thing, and this might be only my thing, but I think it's a thing. So I don't want to project onto you like my whatever my insecurities are, but it seems so. Here's my position. Absolutely, every business owner wants to be successful. The only way that you can be successful, as far as I'm concerned, is through sales and marketing. It's about the way you find, win, and keep customers. Okay, and that's about delivering value for your customers as well. But people don't want to do it. They really don't want to do it. And if I think about the reasons why that is, I'm kind of developing a list. One of them is the jargon. People don't know what people are talking about. Another one is that people don't trust marketing agencies. Another one is the reputation that marketing has in the world. Like I was talking to the people on this course this week about spam emails. How on earth did it happen that spam emails became deserving of the worldwide ire? As far as I'm aware, nobody was ever injured by a spam email. You know, they might have been defrauded, but they could be defrauded by any other channel as equally as well, because that was only ever a link. But for some reason, spam email is like the worst thing you can do. Like the worst thing you can do when you're driving your car is be on the phone. It's like however people respond is perfectly appropriate, because being on the phone when you're driving the car is the worst thing. Like being a marketer and sending spam email is the worst thing you could possibly do. Another is that they're scared of the response that they're going to get. So I've been doing some really inelegant, clumsy, spammy marketing because I just feel after 7 years of not investing in the effective marketing at all, I feel like I should be doing something. So I'm doing what I can with the limited amount of energy and the no money that I've got. You know, I'm spending 2 or 3 hours a day and stuff is starting to happen. And for me, that's positive because something is happening, you know, and now I can make it shine as I go forward. But some of the responses I've had have been obscene. But there's only 3 that have really been really nasty. But one guy was like, "Don't send me messages, pal," on LinkedIn. And like, pal is aggressive, isn't it? So I'm like, "Are you all right?" He's like, "Don't patronize me." And I'm like, "No, wait, because there's nothing I've done to elicit this response from you. Do you know what I mean?" So this is about, and I don't know. So what I'm doing is I'm doing a bit and I'm pushing back because I'm on this mission to get people motivated to do something about their marketing. So if I speak to 3 people that engage with me badly and say, "Look, you don't need to do that," then that's reasonable. But these are the reasons that people don't engage in marketing. That's kind of what I'm saying to you. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's quite an interesting point. I mean, there's a couple of things to think about. Number one is, when did it get to a point where every time your phone goes or every time and it's an unknown number, you don't pick it up because you know it's not your mum or your dad or your friends. You know that it's a salesperson. Right?
Yes.
And that can get aggressive and it feels very, it just feels, you feel like, "Oh, just go away, I don't want to talk to you," kind of thing. And I think that is quite a sad state we're in, where our home phone line goes, we never pick it up because we don't want to talk to someone trying to sell us something. And so often it's associated with fraud. So I think the problem with spam is it gets associated with fraud. It's not the same thing, but it's very, very hard to disengage the two. You know, you sort of go, "Oh, I've got this from the NHS," but it's not from the NHS. It's not. It's called spam, but actually it's fraudulent. Do you see what I mean?
Yes.
So, and I think that may be where that's coming from. And I think we've also got very precious about our time and I think this comes back to the fact that if I go online and I will just unsubscribe to stuff now. I never used to do it, and then I would realise I'd come in the morning, I'd get 15 emails coming through. And it was just stuff that I hadn't said I didn't want, basically. So I just started unsubscribing. And it's been quite an interesting experience because some people take absolutely no bloody notice of it at all, and they just send it to you under another name or whatever else. But I feel that if someone says to me and reaches out and says, "Hey, listen, we're doing this," if I don't want to hear, I will not be rude. I might just go, "Thanks for letting me know." I might just keep it really low key because that's just my human interaction will come in at that point. I think the question you had is, do you think people are scared of spamming? I think they are, but I think it's because the association with spam is more around fraud. So I think what you need to do is be very, very clear about that delineation when you're talking to people and saying, "No, we're talking to a lot of people about something you do in a way that hopefully is fun, it's engaging, it's entertaining." But I do feel that people have got very wary, and it's partly because everyone thinks they know everything now. A few years, you used to kind of get something through the post. I remember getting what they used to have an innovations catalogue. I don't know if you remember it from years and years and years ago, but this catalogue would arrive normally in your Sunday papers. And you would go through it and you'd look at all things. And that was just basically a spam email, but it was coming through in a different way. But because it was kind of telling you stuff and, you felt informed and you felt, that something had been given to you. Whereas I think now with spam email, we don't see any value in it. And most people don't bother to try and put value in it. But if you actually start giving value in those emails, saying, "We've put together this, have a look at it," then I think all of a sudden that changes.
I think that as well. And I think you're right that anyone is an expert. So 2 of these other responses, I'm not looking for counseling on
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I mean, I'm more talking about the way I'm presenting this.
Yeah.
One of these responses was from somebody I know.
Right.
And basically saying, "You're behaving like an Indian spammer."
Oh, nice.
And he works in
racist as well. Excellent.
Yeah, a little bit of unnecessary racism always goes down well, I think, as well. So I kind of pushed back, and I'm like, okay. I mean, I really did push back. He's Australian, so he should be able to take it. But the thing is about that is he's a hypocrite. He works in marketing. So so essentially he's saying, well, you could have done this, you could have done that, or you could have done something else. But basically you're saying you don't do this, but you know better how to do it than I do. Another one was an Eastern European cybersecurity guy who, it wasn't even unpleasant, but he was just like saying, oh, you know, your message is too long. And I'm like, well, thanks very much. It's actually doing quite well. And he's like, oh yeah, but you could do better. It's like, yeah, thanks. I'm going to go and ask an Eastern European. Not that the Eastern Europeans are any less of, not more likely to be able. Let me say that with vowels, Martin, vowels. Not that an Eastern European cybersecurity guy isn't allowed to talk to me about, but I've been in sales and marketing 35 years like you have. Do you know what I mean? I have.
The thing that's interesting is that we started off, what is interesting about this conversation we're now having is when we started off, you say one of the things you like about me is I always call you up on stuff. Now these people are calling you up on stuff. Yes. That's all they're actually doing. But the point is, it's all about the way that is done. And that's the point. You know? And that's, I suppose, where we sometimes don't have the most appropriate language to deal with some people. We all write emails, then we look at them afterwards and oh God, I shouldn't have said that, or I can understand that could have been reconstructed. So I think that I would always look at that feedback as good feedback. And I know again that sounds really of course you would, but actually genuinely I'd kind of go, okay, that's a kind of interesting one because that guy thinks my notification to him was too long. So I'm going to try one a bit shorter. I'm going to just see whether that works. I'm going to see, and I think it's kind of, and that's what we always try to do. When a client gets a negative review on Google, for example, it's about how do we use that to learn from and to actually make ourselves better at stuff. Sometimes it's just a bitter ex-colleague or something, and that's one thing. But actually, quite often people have a point. It arrived, it looked like shit, it didn't do what I wanted. Well, that we need to think, is the photograph on the website of the thing they bought, is it right? Is the description right? Because actually you talk a lot about value. That's where the value comes in. And it's fair enough if someone thinks that you have overpromised and under-delivered whatever it was, it's kind of fine. I mean, that's how I do it. But I do think people get frightened. I think spamming is, it has become the bad guy, and actually some of it's really useful. I get some of the best information I get from someone spamming me about a conference or something. Yes.
Okay, good. So you're calling me out again, which is great. So I'm glad that we're 40 minutes into this conversation and you are calling me out. Again, yes. And I've missed this. I've needed this in my life. The point is not so much, I could do better. We could always do better. That's why I call my business effective marketing, is because you can always turn the screw that little bit harder, get that little bit more value. You absolutely can. You should take the feedback. But I think you're right. Like, people have suffered in the last 30 years, a tsunami of spam. It hasn't just come as emails. It's come through the letterbox. They've been calling us on the phone. They've been doing all of this stuff. So then if that's right and people are scared of this, then there's another issue, which is maybe it should be, oh man, I don't want to say it should be regulated, but it's like,
I think you should regulate it yourself, though. I think you should, so one of the questions you had is, your last question is what recommendations do you have for people in the current climate?
Yeah, but don't spoil the game.
Oh, sorry. But what I was going to say is that when I was thinking about that, it is about understanding that people have all been through a very horrendous time. And it doesn't matter whether you did okay or whether you did badly, or whatever. What matters is it's been an incredibly difficult time for the majority of people. So when you're talking to people, you have to kind of go in knowing that, and you have to use that well and understand that that's the toughest thing. I mean, I have clients that, their businesses went down. I just completely supported them the whole way through. They owe us a lot of money, but I'm going, it's fine. We'll just sort it when you're back on your feet. And by being kind and just being generous and understanding where they're sitting, which is in a really, really shit place, I feel that we've been really able to cement, good relationships and really positive ones. And I'm not saying that in a sort of smug, look, I'm just saying everyone is at a point where they're elastic and they're stretched to their limits, literally worldwide. So what we've got to do, in my view, is just be kind and allow everyone to reset, to remember why they do what they do, whether they're in a job or in a business, and just go back. And that is about being really sensitive in a world where you don't feel like you always want to be sensitive. or as I explain to people, I get slightly fed up of being grateful, because that has what COVID has done, is it's made me have to be very grateful for every day, and I don't feel grateful every day. And that's my kind of message about the way we've got to reset all this stuff now. And so if people think you're spammy, you just go, hands up, mate. Okay, no problem. Terribly sorry. If you want to hear from me, here I am. You know, that would be my approach.
Okay, so I'm 100% with you. Did you write down all of the questions? Which questions have we missed that I wanted answers
So we've talked about, no, we're done.
We're done, are we? You're dismissing me now.
We're done. So qualified to talk about marketing. How do you feel about marketing? Well, I think we've talked about the fact that a lot of people feel really negative about it, but actually I see it as about enabling people and not anything else really. What is it you do? We've talked about that. Yeah, no, I've written them all down. Yeah, we've covered them all. We're done.
We've covered them all. So we can talk about this one because we're not done with this last question.
Okay.
How long did it take you to respond to the COVID situation?
So, what do you mean by respond?
What I mean is I'm only working with 2 or 3 customers.
Yep.
I was only working with 2 customers. And one of them went into overdrive. And the other one, as soon as there was an opportunity to kind of send everyone home and get them paid 80%, took that option.
Yeah.
I didn't have a clue. I did not have a clue what I should be saying. I knew what I should be saying to my customers, but I didn't know what I should be saying on behalf of my customers.
Yeah.
And that went on, I think. Do you know Jim Cunliffe at Face Media Group? You do, yes. Yep. He had the best response of anyone I know, because his response was kind of like yours, and it was immediate. It was like within 3 days, because that's how quickly it happened. He was putting out emails saying, okay, now we're all stuck at home. We're stuck at our desks. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be horrible. Just know that I'm here all day, every day. And he had a 24-hour Zoom running that people could drop in on, and they did. And it was genius, because he was talking throughout, like within 3 days of this thing starting, he was talking to his market. He was the 2nd, 3rd, 4th person that I did one of these chats with.
Yeah.
And he was engaging with his market still. And I saw that happen, and I still didn't know what the appropriate response was. Like, it felt at that time, when at the darkest time, that I'm not saying that a lot of people haven't died, but it felt like, I still don't know anyone who has died of COVID, for example, but it felt like it was going to be hugely impactful. It felt like it was entirely inappropriate to be marketing or selling if we were at a point where bodies were about to start piling up. That's how dark it felt at that time. So what I'm interested to know from you is, how long did it take you to actually get yourself together and get a response out there?
The first thing I might say is I don't know Jim well personally at all. I met him at a couple of events, but I think he's extraordinary in the way he deals with a lot of this stuff. I think he loves his business. He's really good at what he does, and he's a really good communicator. So I'm not at all surprised that you said he did what he did, because he's just an incredible bloke. I mean, I just get his emails, and I never think of him as spam. I think he's a really good man, top bloke, got a really lot going for him. So the answer to your question is, when I realised, so what happened with us is, we have an office which is in a council building, and they just rang and said, we're shutting the building. And I was like, shit, you can't, I've got all my stuff there. So I literally came down, picked up, we'd already worked out that Ben was going to work from home. I literally came down that day, picked up my computer screen, picked up my computers, and went home into the garden den. Now, March last year in the UK was really warm. It was a fantastic time of year. It was just amazing. So the thing I did is, I started calling my clients and said, well, we need to let people know what you're doing. And I know that's really hard, but over this period, and I have to say, it wasn't every single client, because it kind of depended on how they respond to us as well. For most of them, I rang them up and said, during this period, we will put online, we will update with COVID information, we'll do all this stuff for free, just so you can let your clients know where you're at, because we think that's really important. So, and we did that probably for 50%, 60% of our clients. We also had a client that we were doing a new project for, and their business just went, it's kind of in, they run groups and stuff, and it just overnight disappeared. So we had the same conversation, and over time, I just sort of said, look, we will just as long as we can pay our bills, that's all we're going to worry about for the next. And if we can do anything to help anybody along the way, we'll do it. And it was quite extraordinary how, you know, just by talking to people. So that first few weeks, days, whatever it was, really what kept me alive was being able to talk to my clients, because they're a good group of people. And we had a couple of projects that weren't affected, which I know sounds crazy, but they literally weren't affected. So we were really lucky because we were still earning money, and we were able to spend, you know, 3 days a week doing stuff that we were paid for, and 2 days a week doing stuff that we weren't paid for, but just to try and make everyone's business a little bit better and a little bit easier. So, you know, whether they're a nursery, a hairdressers, you know, whatever they were, we were just helping them to tell people what they were doing. And that's kind of where we started. So I think for me, COVID, the worst time was probably about a month and a half ago when we started opening up again, because it felt really scary. I'm naturally, I love being with people. I love that whole thing. But I'd been on my own. I don't mean on my own literally, because obviously I've got my family, but I felt very lonely as a business person. And I found that opening up has been quite, I've had to take each day at a time and learn how to have those face-to-face meetings again. There's things I've loved about this, that I've not missed going up to London, you know, commuting, spending a day to do a meeting. Instead, you can have an hour and a half when you're done. And yes, it's tiring, all that sort of stuff. But my main sense as we were going through this was, how can I help? And I think that's kind of the personality of our business, is how can we help? What can we do to make your life better when your life is far shitter than ours right now? And that seems to sort of, you know, go down quite well. And it's paid dividends. It always pays dividends doing that. That's what I'm saying about be generous with people, because for us, it's always worked. I mean, of course, you get the people who take the piss, and that's kind of fine. I don't mind that really. They're not everybody. You live and you learn.
Yes.
Does that sort of answer your question? Probably an elongated way of answering your question, isn't it?
No, it does. And I thought, I mean, I just remember, you know me, I'm not very often, like in 2000, and I think part of my issue was I wasn't, in 2008, for example, when the financial crisis happened,
Yeah.
I was all over it. Like
Yeah.
that night, I put together, like literally the night it happened, I was up till 3 o'clock in the morning. I put the presentation together. This is how we respond. Like not me, the world, like anyone who's in business. And I was out doing presentations and rabble rousing and doing what I was doing at that time and getting people motivated and excited. And I knew exactly. And probably because I'm not so immersed in it, nothing like as immersed in it, like even 1% immersed in it as I was then. When this landed, I literally was gobsmacked. I'm like, I have no idea. The truth is, I did what you did, and I spoke to my clients, and I'm like, look, I understand if you can't afford to pay what you've been paying, I will do whatever it takes to bring us through. Absolutely. And the response I got from one was, I mean, it went on for 2 or 3 months, but they were basically, I think the trouble is, if you give British people 80% of their income and tell them to just stay at home, they think they're winning at life. So I think that was a very tempting situation. But and then the other one just went ballistic. They're like, you know, we can be involved in the solution for this, and so we're going to.
Yeah.
But I was gobsmacked. I was stuck for words. I didn't know how to respond.
No, and I think that's a really human response. I think that a lot of people were like that, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's a very human thing to realise that this is, and it was global. It was everywhere. There wasn't. Every time previously when things have come out, there's always been a place where it hasn't been effective or affecting that area, that place, whatever it is. The problem with COVID is that it was kind of everyone on some level or another. And that didn't matter whether you were dealing with Hong Kong, Shanghai, India. You know, it was the same thing. We were dealing with a company who does a lot of software development in India. And, you know, the crisis there was just, again, completely like came from sort of nowhere, and it just hit them all incredibly hard. So I feel that is about being the most human you can be, which is, and I think there's a natural thing in all of us to try and sort something out and solve things. And of course, I can't solve COVID with a load of bloody marketing. I can't do that. But what I can do is help people to tell people what they're doing and how it's working out and stuff. And that's what we do.
And I think you're right. I've got an issue with this generous and treat people kindly thing.
Yeah.
Because like there's a saying, isn't there? They say, deliver value, deliver value, deliver value, then ask for the business.
Yeah.
And I really, do you believe in that?
I believe that by being kind to people isn't always about giving. Sometimes being kind is about not giving. So when I say
now we're talking about your pragmatism again.
yeah, I'm talking about being generous as well. Be generous with the things you're happy to be generous with. Don't
Yes.
give away anything that you will regret at any point, because that's not good for anybody. So I think that is how I would see it. So when I say be generous, I don't mean just keep giving people stuff. I don't mean just keep doing stuff for free. What I mean is just accept that the world is not the place it was, and try and be sensitive to that, and help people pragmatically in achieving what they want to do. Be practical about it, give advice where you can. It doesn't mean that you have to give of your soul in order to nurture them.
Yes.
So I totally get where you're coming from. You can't none of us can keep on giving. It just can't happen forever and ever. But I had a philosophy during lockdown, which is if someone asks, I will help if I can and if it makes sense. And we did,
Yes.
all sorts of people, even charities. If charities said, sent me a note and said, could you help with this? Yeah, here's some money, it's fine. Because we were luckier than most and we knew that. And it kind of made me appreciate how lucky we were. And again, with this pandemic, it wasn't about whether you ran a good business. It wasn't about whether your model was wrong or right. It was just sheer and utter luck about what you do. And that's the thing I felt was very, I felt there were people really suffering and they sort of blamed themselves. And you're going, your business, none of us have ever experienced or known anything like this before. Don't think that you're a shit business just because times are a bit tough during a pandemic. Of course they're going to be tough during a pandemic.
Yes. And I think that's right. And I've asked now, so you're the 15th person I've spoken to in this series, and I've asked all these
so
people.
far down that list, Martin. I can't believe I wasn't number one, quite frankly. But
well, to be frank, to communicate with you frankly on the web, you took a little bit of convincing, didn't you? So anyway, because you weren't clear on my motives, or that I had sufficient reason to be doing this. But I think the conclusion that I've come to is that actually being an effective marketer, a good marketer, is being constantly engaged with your market and being able to identify the opportunities that exist in that market to add value. So morally, I'm square, so, and that's all that you needed to do. That's all you need to do ever, is be constantly engaged with your market and be looking for opportunities to add value. Yeah. And I think you're right. We can't all give forever. And there are certainly people who can take forever. And those people will drag you down if you are too generous, has been my experience,
Yeah. And I think, sadly, I think a lot of us have learned that in business. I think, because my inclination, I think you were saying, you talked earlier about when you go into a meeting, everyone got really fired up. And then when you went back in, and one of the things, again, I think you taught me without realizing you taught me, was that if you give them 80 to 90% of everything in the first meeting, what are you going to give them when they employ you? Another 20%? Yes. That's no value. So that's partly how we've developed some of our processes, because we realized that we needed to have a process that allowed us to learn and develop those relationships with people. And, I think it's kind of interesting where you learn things, isn't it? And why you learn them. And those things are really important if you want to carry on with your business. And I've got clients now coming back online and they are so excited to be there, and it's just fantastic to hear them getting excited about their businesses again, because that's exciting. It makes my job exciting. It's much more fun working for someone who gives them monkeys about their business rather than someone who's just taking all the credit and all the money and not really giving a shit.
And this is what you were saying before we hit the record button. You said so much good stuff since, but what you were saying before is, why would you care if they don't care? Yes. So what I was taught in my first job post-graduation, also in publishing, I went into like a media sales role, and they told us, look, enthusiasm sells, and if people aren't enthusiastic about the business, then they are so much less marketable. They are so much less attractive, they're not going to be successful. But I think what I've learned from these chats is that, to be a successful marketer and to be a good, like morally good marketer, that's what you need to be doing, is constantly engaging with your market, understanding what they need and want, and finding ways to deliver value. I think that's what you're good at.
I agree, but I think it's also understanding what you are good at. That's the key thing, because you can do what you've just talked about to anybody, but actually, if you really know the people you work well with and they work well with you, you're going to be a much better marketer when you try and do it for everybody. Because
Yes.
your skills, your talents, they don't work with everyone. It's just like your friendships. You know, some friendships are there for life, some are come and pass us through. It's all good, it all adds value. But actually, you know, if you aren't in those places where you can be the best you can be and they can be the best you can be, you shouldn't really. I mean, you should be able to walk away from that business. Because if I can't
Yes.
make someone's business better and they can't make my business better, what's that all about? You know, and because I do think it's two-way. I don't think I see ourselves as an agency that come in and go, do this, bang, 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 and walk away. You know, we genuinely want to get involved with the companies we work with,
Yes.
to help them grow them, to help them be the company they want to be.
Yeah. And I think that's the core message of this, I think, which is be selective about who you work with, because it's 50% of it at least, isn't it? You know?
Yeah, and it's not just being selective, it's also about them being selective. So
Yes.
when if they have a proper recruitment procurement process, and procurement's a sort of technical term used, but if they understand what they're looking for, then when you go in and you shock them by the things you say, that they come out and go, God, no one's actually said that to us before. I think I've won. Because they're the kind of people I want to work with. I don't want to work with people where I go in and I'm one of 6 people and they choose it based on, you know, things that I don't value, basically.
Yes. Good. Did we actually come to the end?
Yes. We're good.
Good.
I think we came to the end a while ago, actually, but we're good.
Is there anything you wanted to say that you haven't said so far?
Oh my God, no. I think I've said more today in the last hour and a half than I said in the whole of COVID, but you know, that's fine.
Good. A few people are saying that as well. It's good to talk, I think.
Yeah,
it's really good to talk.
Yeah.
So, Joe, thank you so much.
Thanks, Martin, for asking me along, and cut out the bits where I'm doing too much rabbiting, won't you?
No, I'm not cutting anything. I told you before we started, we're not cutting anything.
No one's going to watch all of this, surely.
No, well, you're right. Well, I've got an issue with this, Joe. I think, is it really our job as, like, so the best example is Joe Rogan. Do you know Joe Rogan?
No.
Okay, so you're the only person on the planet who doesn't know Joe Rogan. So Joe Rogan is an enormously successful American podcaster. So what he does is he sits down and he chats to people for like 3 hours at a time.
Okay, yes.
And Spotify have bought, like 6-7 months ago, bought his podcast for $100 million.
Yeah.
The thing about it is, you can't see it now because he's moved them all onto Spotify, but they clip up these conversations. So the thing about it is that the long form conversation might have 6 million views. The clip might have 800,000 views.
Yeah.
So what I take from that is that people are capable of following a conversation if the conversation is of interest.
Yes.
And I don't want to contribute to any further degradation of people's attention spans.
No, okay, I totally get that. And I think you're absolutely right. I think that we actually need to understand that people want, you know, they want in-depth stuff. They don't always just want this shallow, you know, and I totally get it. I mean, I see a lot of stuff. I mean, it's interesting you're talking about your website and I'm going to put these 2,500 words on, whatever else. See, I would be going, as my question to you would be, why? You know, what are you trying to achieve? And then I would be looking at all of that stuff, because I totally agree that we've all got into this very narrow world. And I think it's a real problem with how we get our news and our information now. I mean, I still buy books because I like the in-depthness of a book. I like the fact I can jump in it and out of it as and when I want. And, you know, I mean, I've got a whole shelf of them here that I look at. And I just kind of go, if I'm trying to think about something or I'm trying to resonate or understand something, then often someone's done it better than I'm ever going to do it. So I will look and I'll go, okay, that's interesting. And then I use that, bung it in with my own bit of sparkle or whatever. And that then becomes the thing I do. Rather than they do. And so no, I totally agree. I get it. It's a good thing to do.
And I might clip these, you know, I might take, the other thing I think is that I spoke to a guy 2 conversations ago, and he was talking about nuggets.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I might take a nugget out of this, or I might attend a day's training and I might take a nugget. And I think sales and marketing is really important. And I don't think it should be communicated like nuggets, like on the off chance that you find this nugget. It's like, for me, there is process, there is, and so people should, I would hope, it won't happen immediately, but I would hope that in the fullness of time, enough, and for me, if like, so where I am on my YouTube adventure is I'm making about $20 a month and I'm getting about 100 views a day.
Yeah.
So I am, if these things are valuable, I'm helping 4 people an hour.
Yeah.
Without even having to know about it or engage with it. Do you know what I mean? I'm doing the work, putting the work out there, and that's happening. Actually, that's enough for me right now.
Yeah.
You know, I would hope that more and more and more people will find these things. So the reason I'm planning to put 25,000 words a week on my website is because that will give me a bite of the Google cherry, you know, essentially. And I'm getting a bite of the YouTube cherry. But really, I'm not expecting to be rich or retire from this, but I do want to help as many people as I possibly can. And definitely,
I think perhaps what you're doing as well is you're showing people that there's choice, that you're showing people that there's not necessarily a one size fits all marketing agency or printing or whoever it is. There's actually a lot of decisions to be made. And if you think that all agencies or all individuals are the same, if they're in a similar industry, then the key thing is they're not. And if you find the one that's right for you, you'll succeed. It will work really, really well. And if you find someone that's not right, it will have quite a negative impact on your business. And I think that would be the thing that I think is one of the most important things you're doing, is you're allowing the people who are behind the scenes doing a lot of day-to-day, everyday marketing, talking to people, communicating. If you can understand where they're all coming from, it enables you to make a better decision at the end of the day with who you want to work with. So I think that's
absolutely. So where I am is I'm thinking, if I'm at the point where I'm saying, okay, I need to invest in the marketing of my business, how can it not be useful to hear an hour of what you have to say when you have 35 years of experience and you've done this for hundreds of customers? And the other thing I'm wary of doing is deciding what the value is for people, you know, because when I clip this up, I'll be like, oh, that was a brilliant thing that Joe said, or that was a brilliant thing that I said, or I asked a great question or whatever. That might not be what they need. Do you know what I mean?
I don't think it is all about nuggets either, actually. I think that they're just like, they're the clickbait almost, aren't they? And I think that's why people we've got very used to seeing, you know, a headline and going, oh yeah, that's the thing I want to read. And you go in, and I don't know about you, but I probably go to, say, 3 things a day that I go into, and it's a bit disappointing what's actually in there, because the only good thing was the nugget. Nothing else was good or useful or relevant or informative. And that can get really frustrating. So I totally get where you're coming from on that.
Yeah. So people talk about the secret of marketing. The secret of marketing is understand it as well as you can and do it as effectively as you possibly can, as cost effectively as you possibly can. That's the secret, you know. And so, yeah, that is and what I'm communicating here is that I need your approval that I'm doing the right thing here, Joe, because like literally, if people want to understand about marketing, how can it not be valuable to hear what you have to say when you've done this for 35 years? When Ed was doing this from about the time I was born. Do you know what I mean? How can it not be valuable to hear what those people have to say? And
I would endorse that. I would definitely say you're right. I think there's a huge value to it. I don't quite know who your audience would be, but anyone who is watching this, I'd really love to know who you are, because actually, if you've got to hear, that's pretty impressive.
Yes.
You know, so I would say, and that's the learning, isn't it? The learning is, who are these people who want to spend this time doing this? And, you know, and they're people to engage with. They're in terms of, you know, just actually wanting an in-depth view of things. Because again, like you say, I think so many people just want, you know, a little snippet of stuff all the time. And snippets don't add up to a story. You know, they just don't. You need to have a whole story. It needs a beginning, a middle, and an end.
And this whole nugget thing contributes to this deepest, darkest secrets of marketing thing, which is like, basically, you're going to have to be lucky enough to discover these nuggets if your business is going to be successful. It can't be as tenuous as that. It can't be, because there are millions of businesses in the world. You know, it
Absolutely.
can't be.
If it
Yeah.
was that simple, then everyone would do it, wouldn't they? I mean, that's what we always say about SEO. People sort of say, "Oh, my son read this and it says," and we go, "Okay," you know, and you know where that conversation is going, and it's kind of
Yes.
like, you know, okay, this is why we don't do what you're suggesting. You know, this is the thinking at the moment in the world that we live in.
Yes.
And I think that, you know, we do owe it to ourselves actually, and to people around us, to talk to them as though they're intelligent human beings, and as though they actually have a thirst for knowledge, not just a quick fix all the time. Because there are quick fixes to practically every part of our lives, but quick fixes are exactly that. You know, if you glue a poster to your wall, it will not last as long as if you screw it on properly and do the right job. It just won't.
You're absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. Well, as long as I have your endorsement, which you said I do.
You do.
You are free to go and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Yes. Martin, it's been lovely to talk to you. It's been really good to catch up, and we'll catch up offline sometime soon.
Let's do that. And maybe in 30 or 40 more episodes, I might come back and grill you some more.
30 or 40? I can't believe I'm that far down the line again. Suddenly I've gone to number 60 in your list of people.
Okay. Well, do you want to do this every week? We can.
No! No, that's fine. That would be great. All right, take it easy. Thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you so much for your time. Cheers, Joe.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.